Hello and welcome to episode 37 of The Board. I'm Gavin Coughlin, Agile coach, and I'm joined by...
Kirsten Donaldson. We don't have Paul Llewellyn this week because he's actually left us, sadly. However, we will be joined
Just a
next
different
time.
job, he hasn't left.
Town.
Yes. Or, planet.
Anyway, so today we're going to be talking about product discovery workshops.
Yeah, I thought we'd talk about one that I did recently because we've done a couple of product discovery workshops and we've been trying different things, and I did one recently which I thought was quite successful. So I just thought I'd go through the steps that we took during that workshop. And
To start just at the beginning, when do you usually run a product discovery workshop? Some clients come to us already having a pretty good idea of what they want to achieve, and sometimes even how to do it. But in this situation, what made you decide to do it?
The client came to us and they had an idea of what they wanted to do, a vague idea, but nothing concrete. It was just something that came up because it's a website for World War I, and they knew that they wanted a website to display World War I media, like videos and audio and images and such, but they didn't really know much beyond that. So we wanted to get them in, and we wanted them to meet the team and get to know the team and get their vision out of them as well. And we had one little workshop where we just went through a team charter and introduced them to the team and asked them for what their vision was, but it still wasn't quite enough for the team to actually start work with.
This is a greenfield site, right? So it's a little bit different if you're doing a redevelopment of an existing site.
Yes.
But being that it was greenfields, that really the scope was wide open, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And so I wanted to get them in and help not only define the vision for our team, but also help them to define their own vision, and also give us a starting point so we could actually start writing some stories, because it's hard to write stories for something that's
largely unknown.
Yeah, exactly. So we needed a starting point before we could actually get to work. So we got those guys in and put together a product discovery workshop. Got some of the ideas from stuff we've done in the past, got some of the ideas. I spoke to NZ on Screen, and Nomad 8 did a press release as part of their product discovery, so looked into that and used that as well. Used the elevator pitch and success sliders, which is something that we've used.
So those are both in, are they in the Innovation Games book or the Game Storming book?
No, actually. We were initially looking at doing a product box, or a vision box as it's called as well, and I'll explain that to you before we go any further, actually, because it's quite a cool exercise, and we've used that a couple of times and we've had varied degrees of success with it, so we decided to change that up a little bit. So a product box or a vision box is you give people a box and they think into the future and think about the state that they want their product, or whether it's their piece of software or their website or whatever it is in the future, and think about the ideal state of that, almost like a perfect world state of that product. And on the front of their product box, you think of it like sort of like a cereal box, and you do a logo and you do an image and you come up with some maybe a little slogan for your future brilliant product.
And those are really about the benefits of the product, right?
Yeah, and that's what you do as well. You list out the benefits. So like on a cereal box, they'll say, filled with iron and really great for kids, not bad for their health at all, stuff like that. It's
all lies, of course.
Yeah, all lies. But in this case, you want it to be the truth, and you list out the benefits to the consumer of this product. So it really gets people to think about the end customer and the end user of the product, rather about what they themselves would actually like to get out of it. So they list out all the benefits at the front of the box, and then on the back of the box, you list out some features that will help some of these benefits to actually be brought to the customer. So it's a really good way of, like I said, getting people to think about it from the customer's point of view, but also to get some features out if everything's been a little bit in the dark. And it's not going to cover everything, but it gives you a really good starting point, and it helps you to create a bit of a vision and get everybody get a sense for what they want to get out of the project in the first place.
So which book, just for reference for anyone who's watching later, is that in the game storming book, or I think it is?
That's in game storming. Yeah. I think that's in both actually. I think that's in game storming
and innovation games.
Yeah.
And we'll put up the URLs to those books on Amazon later.
I think it's called Product Box in one of the books and Vision Box in one of the other
Right.
books.
Okay. Yeah.
And like I said, we've done that in the past. We did it here internally at Boost when we were trying to do some strategic planning and looking a year ahead. And we had varying degrees of success.
I mean, really, a lot of these things are really down to the facilitation as well. And I feel like that the more you facilitate these activities, the better the results you get.
Yeah.
So it really in how you set up the exercise at the start.
Yeah, absolutely. And people need to know what's expected of them and what they're doing. I think in the case of Boost, people just sort of did a product box for how Boost is now.
Yeah, I think that was the first time we'd run that one.
Yes,
It wasn't you or I, as I recall.
That's right.
So I guess a wee bit of a practice on the team, and there was certainly some improvements that could have been made there.
And we ran it again a while after that, and it was a lot more successful.
Did we?
I ran it with a couple of people from Contact Energy, and that's just as an exercise, but it went really well.
Did you?
And National Library,
right.
yes.
Okay.
So that was more successful, but still it's a little bit hard for people to get their head around, and people sometimes find it a little bit intimidated when it comes to drawing something. And I found that out again recently when I did a poster session with a group of people. Some people are just a little bit intimidated.
Even when they were, because I mean, I know that when you did the poster session, and that was about getting some ideas out around a new project, they worked in groups of 6 or 10 or something like that. Did you find even then there was a reluctance? Because my view is if they work in a group, there's going to be someone who can pick up a pen and draw something.
Yeah, well, with some groups, there was a bit of reluctance. With other groups, none at all. Some people dove in, so you just never really know. So that made me think maybe for this situation not to do anything that involved drawing.
And for this particular client, you thought you'd try something different.
Yeah. So what we ended up doing in the end, we did success sliders, which I'll go through soon, and we did the elevator pitch, and we did the press release. Sorry, it slipped my mind for a second. I was just thinking it would be great if I brought in the examples of what we came up with, but it's probably best I don't share that anyway, because the project's still underway. So, first of all, we started with success sliders, and some of you may be aware of these, some of you may not be. But success sliders is a way of getting information out of the client as to what's important to them going forward in the project, and where in the future there may be some room, some jiggle room, some trade-offs that might be possible. So. I'll explain it, and this is printed out in A3, so you won't be able to see the details necessarily.
But there is actually a picture of this on a blog I wrote recently as well, on the Boost blog, so you can have a look there.
Yes, I think the latest post on the Boost blog is this. Yeah. So this is the success sliders. As you see, it's a grid, and you can write 6. Sometimes people put in 7 different points, and they're things that pop up in every project, and it's really what's important to the client, things that are important to them, their priorities really going forward. So the first line we have here is stakeholder satisfaction. The second line here is deliver on time. Second is quality. And there's different ways you can do this. You can give people a certain amount of, and I'll point out as well the vertical columns here. It just goes 1 through to 5. And there's a couple of different ways you can do this. You can either give people an amount of points that they can spend. So each column equals an amount of points, or else you can tell them that they can't. We did in this case, we had it all drawn up on a whiteboard, and people put post-its in the corresponding space on the grid. So sometimes you give them points, and sometimes you tell them that they can't have a post-it in like 2 post-its in 1 column. They all have to be split out over different columns.
In this case, you do have some.
Yeah, in this case we do.
So you get the points.
So this time it was points. What I did was I started off with all the post-its in the middle column, in column number 3.
Yeah.
So that was a total of 18 points.
Yeah.
And I said you have 18 points to spend, and I want you to move these post-its around, and anytime you move one up towards 5, which is something that's really, really important for you, it means you have to move something down as well. You can't go over that 18 points. And obviously, when you run this exercise, the temptation for the client, in our case, is to put everything in 5. Everything's equally as important. But that doesn't really work, as we know. We can't get usually full scope done by a certain time for a certain budget. Just doesn't really work like that in the real world. You have to
really
work on that.
A first exercise in prioritization for the client, because obviously they're going to then move on to user stories and prioritizing those. So I think it's a really great start, to get them used to, you can't have it all at the same time.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And it's a really tough exercise for them to go through, because it really makes them think about things that from the outset which are difficult to think about, and it's a good foundation to set in many ways. So here in this situation, you can see that deliver in time is very, very important. That's because it is a World War 100 website, so there needs to be in place by a certain time to match up with the commemorations
activities. Yeah.
Yep. And then equally as important as that was quality. So whatever we do, the quality has to be really, really high.
Particularly because we're dealing with video, I think.
Yes, yeah, that's right. So the things that came down a little bit because those went up, we had shareholder satisfaction, because it's a project that's already been given the go-ahead, I suppose, and it's for the public, so the stakeholders don't really, it's not for them, basically, and the stakeholders that don't play quite as big a part in this.
For users rather than for someone back at the office.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And what also came down is the scope. So if we're run out of budget and time, that scope can be
reduced,
can be negotiated. Yeah, which is great to see. Usually, when you run this exercise, everybody tries to push everything up, and the one thing that suffers is the last thing here, which is the team satisfaction, because clients don't necessarily care about how satisfied.
Well, I think maybe it's more they don't see the value. I think they begin to see the value once you start working, but at the outset of a project, it can be to see why that's
well,
important.
exactly. Yeah, maybe not caring was the wrong choose, but it's certainly the one that you do see suffer. That's a bit of a pattern there. But that's the time when you have to explain to them that if the team satisfaction is really low, then you're going to suffer on quality. And that's going to be a real issue. So team satisfaction is incredibly important. So we started off with that exercise, and that went really well, and it gave everybody a good idea of what's really important in this situation. It's the time and the quality, which is.
And it really aligns the team with the product owner or the product owner group as to what's important. They're all in the room at the same time, and they all understand. Rather than sort of hearing about it later and not really being in tune with it.
Yeah. So once we had that done, we were ready to move on, and we decided we'd do an elevator pitch. So for anybody who's not aware or hasn't heard of an elevator pitch, imagine you get into an elevator and somebody asks you, "Hey, what are you guys working on at the moment?" And you need to describe your project in a nutshell before that person gets out of the lift a number of floors later. So it's really 1 or 2 sentences that describes your project.
Have you got a formula there for that? I've not seen this before, actually.
Yes, we found a formula which really helps people, because I've done the elevator pitch before without a formula, and it's just really hard and can go on and on and on, and it's really hard.
And that's kind of the opposite of what we want.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's sort of meandering through.
Yeah, and it's really hard for people to agree on. So the formula that we had goes for who the is a that unlike our product. I will of course explain that.
Yeah, it was so fast.
Yes, so you start off with the for. Who is this actually for? And we have got an example here, which is for a road closure system. So in this case, it's for individual construction teams.
Right.
Then you go who, and it's what they want to achieve, or what they do. So who needs track road access to the construction site? So that's what they really need to do.
Yeah.
And then which is just the name of your product. So in this case, the road closure system is what is your product?
Briefly.
Yeah. So it's a safety communication tool that. What does it do? Yeah. It informs crews when roads will be closed. And that's it. There's a full stop there, and then you get to the sentence, which is just a bit of a point of different sentence. So unlike, and in this case it's the current paper-based system, our product in this situation is web-based and can be accessed by all contractors anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, so it's showing the benefit as opposed to something else.
Yeah.
How did that work with your team, given that it was a website for the public? How did it go on the unlike?
Well, this unlike, because there are obviously other World War 100 websites out there, so unlike other World War 100 websites, our product is I think it was a highly curated set of quality images and video.
Okay, rather than just sort of putting all the material they have into it.
I think the full thing was our product is a highly curated set of videos and images showing the smaller stories of the war.
Yeah.
Because we're not in this situation, we're not just trying to talk about the huge battles and the things that people already know.
There's a real focus on what was happening at home and everyday people's lives.
Yeah, exactly. And talking about how lice was a terrible thing in the trenches. People aren't really aware about how much of a tyranny lice caused in the trenches. So it's the smaller stories that people mightn't be aware of, and we're not trying to show every single video that we have available. It's this really, really high quality stuff that we're trying to show. So that's the elevator pitch, and that they gave them a really good sense of what the project was, and
that's something they can take back to the office as well.
Well,
someone asked them in the office, what are you working on?
Yes. Well, interesting, I was talking to the next exercise, the press release. I was talking to NZ on screen. They said when they did the press release, they actually used it as a press release.
Well, that must mean that they were able to deliver on those objectives. I mean, we can go into what that is actually before we sort of talk about that.
Yeah, that's right. But also, they modified it a little bit, but also the client that we went through this with, they also said, can we use this press release to circulate around? So it's fantastic. And I also ran this recently with quite a large group of people, split them into teams, and they all did their own press releases and presented them. That was trying to...
It's really, really interesting to hear what, in that situation, is a large group of people, to hear what the different teams come up with, like what they think they're doing.
Exactly, and to see if everybody's vision is aligned. And everybody's vision was incredibly aligned. It's very interesting to see that it all came out in the press release. So we've run it a few times, and it's always been really successful. And this is the one that we chose to replace that product or vision box exercise that we spoke about earlier. So the press release, you introduce it, and our way of introducing it was to say, hey, say it's Anzac Day 2015, and you're having a cup of coffee in the morning, and you pick up the paper and you read a press release about this website. What would you like to be reading? And this press release that we're going to build together is going to be is going to be that press release that you read in the paper. And so you try to set the scene a little bit and try to get people really into the minds of reading a future newspaper or press release about your product. So once you've done that, you take them through it bit by bit. You don't get them just to write the whole press release in one go. You don't tell them to sit down and write a press release. You take them through the different sections. So the first one would be your heading or your headline. And in our case, I wanted to not just name the product in the headline, but I wanted them to come up with a snappy headline that would make people want to read it and encapsulated what's
the best thing about this.
Yeah, the best thing about it. So they did that. And the next item that I got them to think about when they were finished their headline is then the subheading, which is just one sentence underneath the title, and you're trying to get across the main outcome of your product, or the main benefit in many ways as well. So once we had that done, we got to there was a bit of drawing involved here. We got them to write a picture, or draw a picture, which is pretty good fun, and they're a bit daunted at the start because it was a picture of a website that doesn't exist. But it was also really interesting because we really quickly got out sort of in their minds
what they thought it might look like.
What they were picturing, in this future site. But again, it's just a fun little thing to do in many ways as well. So they draw a picture that's going to accompany this press release in the newspaper. And next up is a really, really important one. They're all important, but this was the summary. So this is the first proper paragraph of your newspaper story. And in this situation, you facilitate by telling people that imagine this paragraph is all that the reader is going to read from this story. This is the only thing they're going to read. They're not going to read
sort of
anything
the classic
else.
newspaper article, the upside down triangle.
Yeah, the pyramid, isn't it?
Yeah, upside down triangle.
Yeah, yes, interesting. I've never heard it called the upside down triangle.
Maybe it's a pyramid. Yeah.
But so this is a short summary, but it's still got to really capture everything that the product is about. So it's probably the one that's hardest to write in many ways, but really, really important. And once they manage to nail that summary, the next paragraph is about the problem, and you're describing the problem that this product solves, or the issue that this product solves.
It's interesting. Just thinking about this particular project and the fact that it's a website. Because quite often it's not a problem necessarily.
Yes.
Again, it's another benefit.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's right. I suppose the problem this solves in this case was because this is a film archive where you have to actually, in a lot of cases, physically visit the building to view this material. Usually this way you can just see it online and you don't have to actually walk to the archive and arrange a meeting and see some of the footage. So there was a bit of a problem that you could solve there. And the next paragraph you want to take people through is to describe how your product elegantly solves this problem that you've previously just described. Which is a little bit easier to write because you've already described your problem, so you should have something in your mind about how you're actually going to solve this. And then the last two things that you take people through in your press release, you take them through a company quote. So this quote is from a company spokesperson on the client side, and it might be a quote about them waxing lyrical about their product, or else talking about the benefits that the customer are going to get from this product. And hopefully something enthusiastic.
Yeah, so we're excited to release this never before seen material.
Yeah, exactly. And the very last thing we want to do is another quote, but this time it's from the customer's point of view, and it's them, again, hopefully enthusiastically talking about how they benefited from this and what it means to them. So once you have this press release done, and you have everything from the headline through to the picture through to the quotes done, you have a really good idea of what people are hoping to get out of this project and what their overall vision is. And like I said, I ran it for this project, and it gave the team a really good idea of what we're trying to achieve, and also on the client side solidified a lot of things in their head, and they said that they'd like to circulate that around their own company so people can read it and get an idea of what they're actually doing. And when I ran this in a larger group, it was about 35 people, and split them into teams, it was really interesting to watch them present their press release and just to see how much their ideas aligned or how much they didn't align. In this situation, they aligned very, very closely.
That's great.
But interestingly, we then went on to discuss their vision in a separate little workshop after doing the press releases, and it was very hard for people to decide on what their vision was. It was, you think, looking at the press releases, that their visions were aligned, but when they actually tried to encapsulate their vision in one sentence, they just could not agree on it. And I'd probably run that differently if I was doing it again, because the conversation sort of went full circle until we came up with something. But those press releases, they were so aligned with that. I'm not sure how I do it if I did it again.
I don't know if there's a way to sort of gather the material from the press releases as a start to the conversation about
even the pictures that they drew were very similar in many ways.
Yeah, so I guess it would have been good to sort of use those as the basis for the next conversation.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're sort of taking them right back to the start again.
Yeah, that's right.
You know.
But so if I was doing, and we're always looking for new ideas and new things new sort of games and exercises for people. We don't like to stick with one for a long period of time.
Yeah.
We're always looking for bigger and better things. So if people out there have any ideas, leave a comment, or if you want to try any of this stuff, we will put some links under the live stream video, because most of the stuff, there's information about it online.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Sam, who's doing the technical stuff today, he was part of that product discovery workshop. Did that help you and the team when we went through all this stuff? Yeah, that's a yes and the thumbs up.
I was wondering, actually, as we've got a couple of minutes left, whether it's something that the team will revisit. Is it somewhere where they can access it, or?
Oh yeah, well, absolutely. You have to send this stuff around. It can't just disappear.
Right. I was thinking more of like on the wall, but sure, in Basecamp.
Oh yeah, so yeah, I just sent it around electronically. We don't have it displayed beside the Scrum board, for example. But
just thought it might be an idea of, because sometimes when you're working on something, you can get bogged down in this sort of detail.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good idea.
Sometimes it's good to sort of draw back out and think about, does what I'm doing align with the original vision?
I think that's a great idea. I might actually stick that up beside the Scrum board today. It's a really good idea.
You're welcome.
Because that sort of stuff should be made visible. Otherwise, it can sort of get lost in the ether somewhat.
I mean, when we were talking about company vision a little while ago, I was reading something about people putting the company vision up on the wall and then thinking throughout every day, is what I'm doing right now in line with that vision?
And then that's
if not, should I be doing it?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what you want everybody to be working towards that all the time. And you're right, if they're not doing something, why are they doing it? So,
is it of value? So it can be quite hard to remember when you get bogged down in things on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, absolutely.
Anyway, I think that's it for today, isn't it? Thanks for doing heaps of talking, Gav. I'll just sit back and took it easy, really.
I do love to talk.
And we'll see you again in a couple of weeks' time.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.